Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Notes from the Pastor Cave. And I guess we would call this sweaty, humid early evening edition of Notes from the Pastor Cave. We had really kind of a hot but beautiful day. And then we had some really heavy rain come through, and it was real windy, like doors were slamming and everything. And then after the storm was over, the wind just died. So there's kind of all this humidity in the air, and it is super still. And I'm a person that actually likes heat and humidity, but it's a little tough even for me this evening. So if I choke or cough a couple times during the filming of this, you'll kind of understand why, because after all, I am in a cave here, so you have to forgive me for that. We're gonna move into one of those chapters that, if you're a champion of the Bible, and if you're a champion of God's people, and you love seeing people victorious, and you love seeing people succeed and things like that, this is a really difficult chapter. That would be chapter 32 of Exodus. And if you don't happen to know that number and how that sequence is, this is the incident of the golden calf. Okay, so what has happened up to this point is that Moses has been up on Mount Sinai. The people have been camped around Sinai for a pretty long time. 40 days, probably 40 days plus, and Moses has gone up there, and there's things that have happened. He's come down and gone up and things like that. But at the end of all that, what's happening up on the mountain, we find at the end of chapter 31, and he, meaning God, gave to Moses, when he had finished speaking with him on Mount Sinai, the 2 tablets of the testimony, tablets of stone written with the finger of God. So you have this really incredibly beautiful, glorious, amazing thing happening up on Mount Sinai, right? He's given all of these instructions, starting with the commandments and then the laws that follow the commandments. And then, this is how you're going to build the tabernacle, and God is real specific, and even down to Aaron's clothing, and how he washes his hands and his feet, like we talked about last time, and all this glorious thing is happening. But here's the problem. The problem is that it's Moses that's seeing this. But the people are down below, and they're not seeing any of this, and there's a little problem there. So it says in verse 1, when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down, and I think delayed is a key word here. When the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people gathered themselves together to Aaron, and they said to him, "Up," in other words, get up, "make us gods, who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we don't know what has become of him." Okay, So they consider, and rightly so, they consider Aaron the de facto replacement for Moses if Moses isn't going to be there. Okay, and in all fairness, okay, just to try to be completely fair here, there's been all this rumbling and stuff going up on the mountain, and Moses is an old man. Okay, he's a pretty old guy, so it would be fairly easy for a rumor to start that, maybe Moses isn't coming back. Maybe the old man's heart gave out while he was up there on the mountain. It would be fairly easy for a group of people to say, of course, once a rumor starts like that, it's really hard to control. And so, but here's the thing: the people in some way had developed a timeline in their own minds, in their own heads, and they kind of thought that at some point Moses would return to them, and Moses did not return to them. So this is the word, when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down. Well, you don't know if he's delayed or not. If as far as God's timing is concerned, there's no indication that God feels that Moses is delayed, or that the whole process is delayed in any way. It's the people who have come up with their own timeline, or their own, here's a good word, their own expectation of when Moses should be down. He should be back in action with us. He should be down. We should be able to see him. Whatever it is that he wants to tell us or share with us or whatever, he should be here by now, and he's not. Okay? And this is so appropriate for our lives, and I realize, international audience, and there's quite a few of you that are from other places, but I can only speak for we Americans. We Americans are incredibly impatient, and as our generations go by, they don't become more patient; they become more impatient. Okay, so my parents that came from the Depression, World War II era, they were pretty patient people. But then when the baby boomers came along, and that's me, I'm at the tail end of the baby boomers, we were much less patient, and we were the ones who really ushered in the idea of this instant society. We want instant everything, all the way down to instant pudding, right? So we don't want to take a lot of time to do anything at all, and we don't want to have to practice any kind of patience whatsoever. So if we just look at that first verse, we see that it's really apropos to most of us, and most of us are. I'm a historian, and I spent a lot of time reading history of hundreds of years ago, and I just marvel at the patience of people. A couple hundred years ago, how long it took to build a house, just to saw one beam of the house by hand. How long that took to do that. And I watch these things, and not only am I impressed by the intensity of the labor, but I'm impressed by the intensity of the patience involved with doing these long projects that took forever, because everything was just a hand tool of some kind, and the tools had to be sharpened over and over again. And everything you did, from our perspective, took a really long time. Now, it was just normal life for them, but there was still it was a slower pace to everything, and so there was a lot of patience involved with life. We've found a way to shed most of that, and so we see delay in the same way that the people do it, right? Because what we do is we set timelines with God, timelines that God never said anything about, timelines that God never approved of. And we just say, well, God, I understand that you said that this thing that's going to happen in my life is going to take a long time. I really felt that when I was praying, and I really understood that from my prayers, that this was going to not be something that was instant, but that it was going to take time. The problem is that our perception of what take time means and what God's perception of take time is are two different things. So there's so many times in our lives when we feel a delay in what God is doing, and then which is fine. It's fine to feel a delay. It's fine to feel frustrated by a delay. That's part of our human nature, and I don't think it's sin to be frustrated by delay, but it becomes sin if we go beyond the frustration of delay into the realm of impatience. Because what happens then is there's just a very small step When we get into the realm of impatience, that's when we begin to do things. And we often do things that we're not supposed to do based on our impatience, which is based on the timetable that we created, not the timetable that God created. So there's a whole chain of cause and effect here, that the people had an expectation that they really should not have had, because God didn't tell them that they were going to be there any number of days or months or anything. He just said, wait here, camp here, okay? And understand this, and this is, I hate to bring this up over and over and over again, but this is reality. The pillar of cloud and the pillar of fire is still there. It's still there amongst the people, okay? So it's not like God and his presence just like disappears and they're like, oh man, what's going on here? Wow, Moses is delayed, and what are we going to do? And are we in the right spot? And none of that is the case. They still have this physical representation in front of them of the presence and the power and the Spirit of God, and yet, because they've set a timetable in their own minds, that timetable is delayed. And so that artificial timetable tells them that they ought to become impatient. And when they become impatient is the point at which they enter into the idea of committing sin. Okay? And that should, loudspeaker should speak volumes to us, because I think that for a lot of us, this is where we really get into trouble with our relationship with God, is this idea of impatience. And so we think, okay, God, I realize that you said this was going to take a while, but then that a while takes longer than we think it should have been, and then we enter into that realm of impatience, and that becomes really dangerous territory for us, because the step after that, the point after that, is where the Israelites fall into some really grave sin. And we should not think that we can escape that, because they were human and we're human, and they had a relationship with God. We have a relationship with God. The earmarks are there. So we have to be warned. Chapter 32 is a very uncomfortable chapter for me. I don't like to read it. I don't enjoy it. But we have to take the warnings that come from there. And all the while, the pillar was there. All the while, the presence was there. Just like, all the while when we're being impatient, the Word of God is right there. And God is ready to speak to us through His Word. But we get impatient. Okay, so that's it for tonight's special humid weather evening edition. Actually, I'm just starting to feel the slightest little breeze come through, so I'm pretty excited about that. Let me remind you that get a hold of me, not in the comments section, but get a hold of me if you would like, half a dozen of these business cards. There are notes from the Pastor Cave business cards. They don't say anything on the other side. All they do is they just you can just give them to people and tell them that there is such a thing as a YouTube channel called Notes from the Pastor Cave. And then you'll be able to hand these out, give these out, and hopefully that will help us to grow the channel. And so I say to you, Vita brevis, gloria aeterna. Life is short, glory is eternal.